Presentations have established themselves as an important and significant part of every manager's life. Your ability to present to a business audience could well determine the success of your business or your career. In this segment, you will be introduced to some approaches to and the nature of business presentations. And additionally, we will define the 4 stages or steps in the presentation life cycle. So what is a presentation? A business presentation is a live, dual-channel multimedia interaction between one or more presenters and an audience. There is always a clear and well-defined business objective that the presenter or presenters seek to achieve. And a business presentation is a focused and planned and considered activity, one that is expository in nature, which presents the audience with data or inference or ideas or concepts. The understanding would be that this exposition happens for carrying on the business, making decisions, or to be persuasive, or to be instructive, and so forth. Another characteristic of a business presentation is that it is, in most cases, a homogeneous audience, people who come together and who are interrelated and have some common ground that they share amongst themselves. And most business presentations, almost all of them, include a period of interaction, time for questions and answers or discussion based on the presentation and the content therein. And in this context, we then need to make a clear distinction between presentations as we see them in a business environment and public speaking or the art of making speeches. They're different things. Some of them arise from the characteristics of a business presentation, but let's run through a few of the differences between the two based on various parameters. The audience, for example, we just said that a presentation is typically given to a homogeneous people with some common ground, whereas speeches, especially those given in large audiences, need not be. Most of them are heterogeneous. Secondly, the objective. As we said before, business presentations have a clear business objective, whereas public speaking could have other kinds of objectives, such as vote gathering, getting people to carry out a morcha, or telling people about art, history, science, etc., for their own personal satisfaction or creative outlets and so forth. And therefore, the messaging in a presentation is focused, rational, and low emotion. Public speaking could be completely the opposite. It could be very wide in its coverage. It could be emotional, and it could be, in some cases, applying logic that you would not in a business environment. Then there's the question of register or degree of formality. Business presentations are formal or semi-formal, whereas public speaking need not be so. Of course, the Prime Minister speaking on the occasion of Independence Day is a very formal occasion, but there are other situations where public speaking does not have the same degree of register. Business presentations almost invariably use audiovisual support such as slides or video or other devices, whereas public speaking typically does not. When we look at duration, Business presentations are typically short, relatively speaking, 20 minutes max, and public speaking could be much longer. Speeches go on for 30 minutes, an hour, it depends on the occasion, the audience, and so, the objective, and so on. And again, interaction. While business presentations plan for and include interaction, in public speaking, it tends to be more of a broadcast, and there's no real one-on-one or one-to-many or limited interaction between the two parties. There's another angle that we must look at when we look at business presentations, and not just in the context of the business, okay? For instance, a survey by a major consultancy firm revealed that executives or managers who excel in presentation skills are 50% more likely to receive a promotion than their less articulate counterparts. So what does this mean? It means that business presentations are one about doing the business, but on the other hand, it's a wonderful platform for you to further your career, to build a brand, and to make yourself known as a influential and personable professional. I'd like now to talk about two aspects of presentations. One, which we've been experiencing over the years, and one that is the trend for the future. In very simple terms, the history of PowerPoint presentations is not the best in the world. In fact, there is a term which is used very often these days, and it's called death by PowerPoint. Okay, that may sound humorous, but it's a fact. The way people make presentations dull, boring, to the point of inducing insomnia and soporific kind of effects on the audience. Okay, so that's what we call death by PowerPoint. And you say, oh, somebody's going to give a presentation, and everybody goes, oh, not again. So death by PowerPoint, too many slides, too much reliance on the slides, too much materials on the slide, and the slide becomes the hero of the presentation, right? And that's giving rise to changes in the way we are looking at presentations. They are not dull and boring. The trend is to make presentations interesting, engaging, and to incorporate an element of storytelling. Now, we are not talking about, Agatha Christie, Amish, Chetan Bhagat kind of story, but we are talking about bringing in insight relating to the business, but in a story-like form, which immediately grabs the interest and attention of the audience and gets them to listen to you. And putting these together with compelling graphics and images, maybe even video, to create what we call visual storytelling, which is the trend in presentations nowadays, right? And so there are the visuals, there's the talk, and there's the story. And there's this very well-known person whose name is Nancy Duart. Duart was the person who actually put together the concept of visual storytelling in the business presentation milieu. She runs a very, very successful company that just produces visual storytelling pieces for clients, okay? And so it's very important, okay, that there's the visual, there's the story, and there's the telling, according to Nancy Duart. And this is what I want you to look at. How do I move away from dull and boring PowerPoint presentations to engaging, interesting storytelling? Okay, so this is something that I wanted to bring out. Think about it. differently and out of the box, okay? And what we're going to do in the next few segments is to try and help you to get there. For instance, this slide that's on your screen shows the picture of a young girl, obviously devastated by war or by some kind of natural disaster. And this is a slide made for a business presentation. And it's so different. This is the cover slide. It's so different. It evokes emotion. It has a great deal of pathos built into it. And it has a very engaging piece of text attached to it. It says, "Profits before people," which is quite the reverse of people before profits. And it's done deliberately to get attention because somebody's, what's wrong with that? And so immediately now you've built in a little storyline on this. So now the presenter can talk about who this little girl is and what's happening and what can our company do about it or what are the issues and so on and so forth. A good example of visual storytelling. Another example is what is cited as probably the most famous slideshow ever, because it was made hundreds or maybe even thousands of times, is a very iconic presentation by former US Vice President Al Gore on climate change. And these slides were built by Al Gore and Nancy Duart, and he has given this presentation many, many times to various audiences across the world. After seeing that, it gave rise to a set of 2 documentary films on climate change, and if you're interested, you go look for Al Gore's documentaries and you can watch them. You can read more about this in the caselet that prefaces Chapter 11 of Communicating for Results, one of the most iconic presentations ever made. Having talked about the trends and philosophical approaches to presentations, I'd like to quickly introduce the fact that when you put the life cycle of a presentation consists of 4 phases, and effective presenters assiduously go through the 4 phases. The 4 phases are: 1, design, where we strategize and plan. Phase 2, develop, build and script, putting words, text, images, video, the building of a presentation, which is both parts, the audio and the visual. Number 3, deliver, using voice and body to actually convey the presentation, to explain it, to interpret it to the audience. Now, this is very, very important. We talked about a dual channel approach. So what happens is that the visual channel is one and the voiceover or the speaker is the other, and the 2 of them have to come together. This is very, very important to understand. That's why it's a dual channel. So when you put slides together, you also have to build text and you have to deliver it in an emphatic and impactful way to make your presentation great. And finally, phase 4, defense. At the end of every presentation, as we know, there's typically interaction and Q&A. I call it the defend phase to make 4Ds. But basically, it's about managing interaction with the audience. And I call this 4th phase sometimes the presentation after the presentation. We'll talk about that when we get to a future segment. But until then, remember the 4 phases: design, develop, deliver, defend. Very easy to do and very easy to implement. So with that, I would like to actually let you know that you have to go through the 4-phase approach to create a successful presentation. And in the segments that follow, we're going to look at each one of them. More information on Al Gore's presentation, as well as a preamble to the process, to the various phases of business presentation are available in Chapter 11 of Communicating for Results. So please go ahead and look for it and read it.